Slumpbuster, episode 58. The dude abides on 3. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Slumpbuster. Quiet on the set, make sure my mic is on. There is Dre and Juju Dog diving towards the pylon. Go for 2, so damn rude, recognize authority. Spitting tips for fantasy, no way you're outscoring me. Bold predictions with conviction every single day. Sports addiction, no restriction, kicking game like Pele. He's the greatest, what's the basis? Pick an athlete, let's debate this game. Outrageous trading places, sudden death, take 10 paces. Turn and shoot, boys the truth, Mamba mentality. Future greats take their place, dreams become reality. Blowing outside, knocked it out the park. Your boy discovered fire like a rock with a spark. Refs acting like Neanderthals. Phantom flags, nothing calls. Heartbreak losses, tragic falls. Every week discuss it all. Settle in, listen up. Free your time like Andrew Luck. Show's about to start. I suggest you buckle up.
The dude abides. Alrighty, guys, this is Juju Talk Sports. I'm joined today by my co-host, Andre Wynn, MMA Dre. You could call him Andre. And our guest from the Sports Plus Life podcast, Mr. Edgar Rodriguez. Now, you're wondering, the dude abides? Let me just start off with this real quick, because it was a topic of conversation in our last podcast. Unfortunately, I missed that episode. We always ask our guests what their favorite sports movie is. And one that had not gotten mentioned before was dropped, The Big Lebowski. Now, if you don't understand The Dude Abides, if you're not familiar with The Big Lebowski as a whole, you definitely got to watch it. But the first major debate I want to get into before we really get into today's topics, is The Big Lebowski a sports movie? Is it even a bowling movie? What is The Big Lebowski? What do you describe it as? Is it a comedy? Is it a crime drama? There's a lot going on in The Big Lebowski. Edgar, your thoughts?
Man, that's a good question. I haven't seen a Big Lebowski in years, and I'm talking years. I don't think I'd consider it a sports movie. I don't think I would.
I mean, the bowling is so secondary in it. What
Very
about you?
subtle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I haven't seen The Big Lebowski in a while either. But from what I do remember, it wasn't like the bowling aspect, right? Like I feel like when it comes to a sports movie, the sport should be what sticks out, right? And so, C Money and I, we recently just did Happy Gilmore. And in that, like, the golf obviously sticks out, right? So you could argue, like, is that one? I would say yes, because the golf is, like, the main point. Whereas The Big Lebowski, it's like the bowling, it's in there, but it's not, like, the main premise or the main driving factor behind the movie. So me, personally, I don't say so. But Corey, still, shout out to you for being the first on our show to name it.
Yeah, definitely check out that last episode. So we had Corey Vincent on, the vice president of the San Francisco Shock. We had a great conversation about esports gaming and the future of that moving forward. Dre and C Money did a fantastic job. So, I know you guys missed me. I took a 1-episode break, a 1-episode hiatus, but I'm back, baby. We had to have a fun conversation to start because, unfortunately, we're not going to have so much fun conversations on this podcast. There's a couple topics that might be a little hit or miss. But let's start about somebody getting paid. And I'm talking big boy paid. I'm talking the highest paid contract in league history. That would be one, quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, Patty Mahomes. He has officially $477 million guaranteed over the next essentially 12 years overall, because he has 2 more years on his current deal, and then that 10-year extension kicks in. There's some opt-outs in there. There's some breathing room if he wants to move around, but Patrick Mahomes is going to be in Kansas City for a long time. And if you are in the AFC, as our guest has a Denver Broncos insignia behind him, you know it's going to be a rough ride with that said. So, Edgar, I'm going to allow you to start this one off first. What do you make of Patrick Mahomes' deal? What do you think of the impact on the Chiefs? And what do you think about the impact on the NFL as a whole?
This is one of those crazy old, like, I don't want to call it a Bobby Bonilla contract, like one of those crazy contracts that you see in baseball. Mike Trout, being one of them. Just one of those ridiculous baseball contracts you see the Yankees hand out to it, wherever they sign in the offseason. It's unprecedented. But Patrick Mahomes, if anyone deserves it, it's going to be him. He's definitely the MVP on his team, definitely MVP of the league. The guy has a gun on him. I've heard some people question his arm. I don't see how you question his arm. But if anyone deserves that kind of money, I think it's Patrick Mahomes right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue that with the track record when we've been spending this entire offseason talking about Dak Prescott's contract. Dak Prescott finished last season 8-8. This guy in his first 3 years starting has an MVP and a Super Bowl trophy in his trophy case. So, I mean, Dre, like when you hear a number like $477 million guaranteed to throw a football, what's the first thought that comes to your mind?
This might be a little bit of a hot take, but I don't think that it is. I think we could see Pat Mahomes being the first like NFL made billionaire, right? Like there's owners that are billionaires, and without a doubt, they made their money doing something else, whether it's oil or they run some other company. But I really think that Patrick Mahomes, if he's smart with his money, he's got endorsements coming up in still, and we know he's a young quarterback, pretty good looking, he's athletic, fun style to play, he's a Super Bowl champion. Endorsement money is going to just flow in for him. Then if he can make some good investments and he's getting 477, like guaranteed, dude could be a millionaire by the time he's 40 years old, 50 years old. So
I believe you meant billionaire.
Billionaire, sorry. He's already a millionaire.
Okay, Dr. Evil.
Billionaire.
Negotiating $1 million.
So yeah, thanks for the catch, Juju. Yeah, he'll be a billionaire by the time he's 40 or 50 years old. So it's outstanding. Like, and honestly, similar to what Edgar was saying, if there's anybody that deserves it, it would be Pat Mahomes. I know there's been questionable contracts like a Jared Goff, right? Or you and I, we always make jokes about Kirk Cousins and his $84 million. But Pat Mahomes, he has everything you want to see from a long-lasting quarterback, right? So if you look at guys like Aaron Rodgers, you look at the Tom Brady's, the technical aspect of their game is so crisp and clean and refined that they can last a really long time. So even if it's 12 years down the road, you can still get some pretty good productivity out of those guys. And I think that's what we see with Pat Mahomes. Now, he does rely sometimes on his athleticism, in my opinion. And we saw that when he got hurt, that knee injury, right? And some of these scrambling plays and stuff like that. But I still think at the end of the day, even when he can't scramble out of the pocket as well anymore, he can still throw a ball. And that's what you really want, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad, Edgar, you compared this to a baseball contract because that's what came to mind when I first heard it as well, because we've heard about Mike Trout, his 10-year deal, Bryce Harper, 10 years, Albert Pujols, Alex Rodriguez. Basically not a lot of contracts that have worked out traditionally. Yeah. But the difference here is in baseball, you basically have to wait till your age 30 season to really get your 10-year deal. Here, don't know Patrick Mahomes' age off the top of my head, but I believe he's like 25.
25, yeah.
Something along those lines. But basically,
24.
So you're catching him, and this is crazy to say, before he's even hit his prime. Yeah. He still has so much more to grow as a passer. When he first came to the Chiefs out of Texas Tech, a lot of people considered him a very unrefined passer. Like he still had a lot of game to work at. And Andy Reid, who's also going to be there for a while, said, I'm going to take this kid and I'm going to make him a superstar, an MVP. In a couple years with the resume he's already has at this point, you could make an argument Patrick Mahomes might already be a Hall of Famer. I'm just saying, like, not too many Hall of Famers can already say they have an MVP ring and a Super Bowl ring
within 3 years of being in the league for sure. Yeah. Being a Broncos fan, I see him twice a year. He does damage to us every time. He got injured here. So he still beat us 15-0. I think 16-0. I think the game was. I think he got his first NFL play against the Broncos as well. But not only that, I'm also an Oklahoma Sooners fan. I've seen that Texas Tech-Oklahoma game where they broke the scoring record. And I was thinking the same thing. I didn't think anything of his passing. I didn't think he'd make it in the NFL. One thing I've always said, though, as well, something that I've talked about Baker Mayfield, is that, and not just him, but, Lamar Jackson and a bunch of other quarterbacks coming in. It takes a village to make sure your number one pick or your first rounder becomes successful. If you don't have the right coaching, you don't have the right schemes, you don't have the right people around you, you don't always have yes men around you. It takes a village to groom these type of guys, and obviously he has a good village around him. I mean, Travis Kelce, one of the best tight ends out there. Watkins, Tyreek Hill, one of the fastest men on the planet. And Andy Reid with his experience as well. It just all worked out. And he had to have faith too. And that's what he did.
Well, the downer, when you do pay a quarterback this contract like that, you mentioned Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is going to be a free agent after next year because, unfortunately, now with Mahomes deal, you're probably not going to be able to re-sign him. Chris Jones, on the defensive side of the ball, he wants $20 million a year. That's probably not going to happen now. So it is a cap sport. We always have to remember that. Now, we have to just kind of like make this guess, and it's hard to really graph this one out, but is Patrick Mahomes going to be able to sustain even as the talent around him starts to dwindle? What do you think about that, Dre?
he's a good enough talent that we'll always see him elevate his team. But I do worry, right, is will they be able to continually pump out, Super Bowls and consistently make it to the big dance? And so, the big dynasty obviously is the Patriots. And I think that's more just a scheme and systems approach. Whereas the Kansas City Chiefs, I do think that Patrick Mahomes is a lot of the driving force. I think Andy Reid's a great mind, and I think they work really well together. But it comes to Pat Mahomes and then having all those guys around him. So I think if you take away some of those pieces, I still think he'll be successful. I think we see him probably in, I would say, at least 2 more Super Bowls. But I don't know how easy it will be for him to continually get there. I don't know if he'll continually be able just to blow out everybody. Especially we've seen that they can be down, 20 points or something in a half and still come back and blow another team out by 20 points. So I don't know if they'll be able to keep up that production, but I think he will continue to elevate his team no matter what the talent is around him.
It's interesting because, you look at the landscape of the AFC for the years to come, right? Let's look in division there. The Denver Broncos. I mean, they will be good. Edgar, I will say I think that they will be a competitive team. I could see them as one of those second wild card teams now that we do have the expanded playoff. But I don't know how good Drew Lock is yet at this point. So I can't for sure mark them as like a constant competitor with the Chiefs. The Raiders, mixed bag. We don't know what we're going to get. The first couple of years of John Gruden haven't really worked out there. And then you also look at the Chargers, talented team, but a lot of tough managerial decisions that you do question at points. In division, it seems like the Chiefs are going to win that perennially from years to come. Now, when you look at the conference as a whole, okay, so the Patriots, Brady's out. Cam's in for at least this year that we know, but it's still going to be up to Bill Belichick for, I would say, maybe the next 5 to 10 years. Maybe that's a guess, because I have to think he told Josh McDaniels at one point, like, hey, back out of that Colts job because I'm probably going to retire here in the next couple of years. I don't think Josh McDaniels would have turned down a head coaching job not thinking Bill was going to retire relatively soon. So Patriots, question marks. Bills, I like Sean McDermott. I like the culture they have there, but it gets hard to keep a defense like that together, and we don't know how good Josh Allen is. And those are going to be like your main competitors really in that conference. So it's like the Chiefs, I'm forgetting the Ravens. I should mention the Ravens. Lamar, we'll see. He needs to make that next step as a passer. Every time they match up against the Chiefs, it's apparent the difference between Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Patrick Mahomes, great talented arm that can run. Lamar Jackson looks to run and will occasionally drop one on your head. But still, that's not efficient enough to beat the Chiefs on a given Sunday. So that's their competition for at least the next few years. We don't know draft picks, obviously, what's going to happen in the conference over the course of a 10-year deal. But I don't see many roadblocks in the way of the Chiefs. And Edgar, again, so you do root for a team in division.
Yeah, I think the AFC and whole have made a lot of changes, a lot of good changes as well. You also got to look at the Dolphins. Dolphins over, I'm going to say just loaded up on talent. Kyle Van Noy from the Patriots is big, one of them. Can't think off the top of my head. I know they made a lot of good moves. You can never count out John Gruden and those Raiders, especially if you're talking about within the division. They too are making a lot of good moves too. Being in a new stadium as well is going to be a game changer. Just all out what the Cowboys are doing. Being in a new stadium kind of pumps you up, wants you to be play better. So there's a bunch of different variables. I don't think people are going to be too worried about the Patriots, given they do have Cam Newton. Cam Newton definitely elevates them a whole lot more. You still have a veteran as Julian Edelman, and then their first rounder, I can't remember his name from last year. Off the top of my head, I just can't think of it. But he still has some good targets there with Cam Newton. Also, Cam Newton still being athletic. Whether his injuries let him be athletic as he used to be is another question. But I think the AFC, you're going to see a lot. It's going to be very competitive this year, especially within the division. Talk about my Denver Broncos as well. Denver Broncos, you have healthy Bradley Chubb coming back. You made a lot of good. You re-signed Justin Simmons. Signed Jarrell Casey as well. So you plug in that middle. We have probably one of the best front lines defensive 7 out there. And I think it's going to be more competitive. And yeah, there's still a lot of questions with Drew Lock as well. Is Drew Lock the real thing? I think he went 5-1, 5-2 there down the stretch or something like that. Something crazy like that. And, you can look at the Broncos season. They didn't lose by a whole lot the whole year. That offense is very questionable, obviously, that first half of the year. And losing Bradley Chubb was a big deal, too. So doubling up Von Miller, who wouldn't want to double up Von Miller? You have to double up Von Miller, or else you can get to your quarterback, causing problems. So I think I'm excited as a Bronco fan. I'm excited as a football fan in general for what's to come next year.
Ray, any closing thoughts?
No, I think Edgar did a great job breaking down all of the teams that are, in conference and in division. So yeah, I think it'll still be fun. I am excited to see what happens and to see if Pat Mahomes can live up to being the first major contract in the NFL.
One thing I forgot to mention was the Chargers. Chargers made had a lot of injuries in the secondary last year. They signed their first round pick, Kenneth Murray from Oklahoma, and they also got Chris Harris Jr., one of the best cornerbacks in the league, for the last few years. So it's going to be more competitive than I think than we expected in the past.
Well, ultimately, at the end of the day, I can't wait till Dak Prescott comes back asking for $477,001 just to beat that record-breaking contract.
Yeah.
Speaking of getting paid, though, let's talk about someone that helps us get paid, and we are ever grateful for them. Our sponsor, Manscaped.com. Go ahead, use promo code SLUMP, get 20% off, plus free shipping and handling at Manscaped.com. Here's a quick word from our sponsor.
This is a message brought to you by the Foundation for a Perfect Package.
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Why do I need Manscaped?
Because the only frill I want is the one up top.
Because being in a relationship is not an excuse to be lazy.
Because I like talking ball, not smelling like them.
Because deforestation is proven to prevent forest fires.
Manscaped is the only brand dedicated to below-the-waist grooming.
Manscaped's Crop Preserver guarantees that you smell your best all day long.
Manscaped Boxer Briefs are the most comfortable underwear on the market.
Manscaped's advanced skincare technology makes nicks a thing of the past.
Manscaped is the #1 in men's grooming. Subscribers get 2 free blade refills every 3 months. Get 20% off plus free shipping and handling with the promo code SLUMP at Manscaped.com. That's the promo code SLUMP at Manscaped.com. Get your Lawnmower 3.0 today.
We are the Slumpbusters.
And we approve this message.
And we're back, guys. Next NFL headline of the day that we're going to touch on here, guys. This one, a little bit more controversial. There is kind of an interesting thing. I'm going to start off the bat by saying I'm not a big fan of it. But week 1 of this coming NFL season, the NFL has made the decision to play the song Lift Every Voice and Sing. Now, a lot of media outlets haven't really been putting it out there as that. They've been putting it out there as, quote unquote, the Black National Anthem. And obviously there's a lot of tension in our society right now. There's a lot of stuff going on. And the NFL didn't do a great job a few years ago when it came to the Colin Kaepernick situation as a whole. So this is kind of them trying to make things right. You also hear about other things like the San Francisco 49ers will be flying a Black Lives Matter flag over the stadium, which I'm completely fine with as a Niners fan myself. But Dre, I'm going to let you lead this topic off. What are your initial thoughts when you hear about the NFL doing this?
So I'm going to be honest, I'm not educated in the sense of why that is the Black National Anthem. I'd have to look at the history. I was never taught it. So I do apologize for, being ignorant in that sense. As far as my thoughts, though, on the NFL doing this, so I appreciate the fact that they are saying, hey, we made a mistake. We messed up with the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. I feel like this is a little bit of an overcorrection, though, in that, okay, we're going to allow you to kneel during the national anthem, I think would be fine. Or we're going to allow your teams to stay in the locker room during the national anthem. I think that's fine. And then them hey, we're going to donate to, charities or to organizations that help out, whether it's, against police brutality and violence, or it's helping out disenfranchised youth. I think those are all good things. But now that you throw this in there, I think it is a good step forward from the NFL standpoint. I truly do think that they're trying to be genuine and saying, hey, we are looking to make changes. But this, to me, I think is going to piss a lot of people off, though, right? And so if you've been on the other side where you're hey, I do think that it's disrespectful to kneel during the national anthem because, you have some affinity for the troops in our country or policemen, first responders, all of that stuff. If you're offended by that, now it feels almost as if they're replacing the national anthem as well. And I know that they're not. I think from what I've heard, they're going to play one of the anthems first and then the other. So I think they're going to play the Black National Anthem first, and then they're going to play the actual national anthem second, from my understanding. Julian, is that correct?
Yes, that's what they're planning. So it's going to take place on every single week 1 game. You're going to have Lift Every Voice and Sing. I'm going to refer to it as that prior to
fine.
the traditional, Stars and Stripes. Anyway, Edgar, like your thoughts on the matter. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I think I understand the intention. I think the intentions are good. If it's just week one, I'm all for it. I think it's fine. As I drop my camera here in a second, sorry. I'm all for it. Week one, if it's just week one, sure. If it's the whole year, the whole season, that's something different. But I get the intention. They did drop the ball on this previously. Yeah, I'm okay with it. I think it'll be all right as long as it's one.
Here's why I'm not a big fan of it overall. And this is no disrespect to Lift Every Voice and Sing, and why I'm going to refer to it as Lift Every Voice and Sing is because it's been dubbed as the Black National Anthem. I just have an issue with the way it's been presented and thrown out there to the public as a whole, because when you do that, what does that say about the national anthem? Like, honestly, what's the statement there? So there's the Black National Anthem, and then we have the national anthem. So is the national anthem inherently associated to any particular race? Is that kind of like what we're saying? I just feel like it's a PR mistake in the way it's been, attributed, and I just don't like it. And I feel like the NFL, like you said, Andre, I think it's a bit of an overcorrection on their part when you do stuff like this. I would rather you show me what you mean with your dollars personally, like you said, donating to these causes that actually make an impact. Do I think that playing Lift Every Voice and Sing prior to game time is going to change the hearts of the most hardened individuals out there who believe in their heart of hearts that one race has superiority over another? Unfortunately, it's not. And I think we need to be frank about that. And I feel as though when we do this, you cause people to double down more. People double down more in their beliefs, and it makes a division. Like we talk about the Confederate flag a couple weeks ago, right? Why I don't like it, why I always hate on the Confederate flag is because I feel like it stands as just a symbol of division. Like, you're here, I'm here, we're not Americans together. And I feel like whenever I think about back to Drew Brees' original statement on the national anthem as a whole, and was he tone deaf to say what he said at the time? Yeah, hell yeah, he was. But I do think that his overall statement, when you combine the two paragraphs together, of it being a unifying moment for us as a country, and maybe I'm old school. Maybe I believe, your duties are to your family, your God, your country, and you could subtract one of those depending on your beliefs or whatnot as well. I feel like there's something to us being together, not divided into you have your national anthem. Hispanics, like myself and Edgar here, you have your national anthem. Everyone else has a national anthem. What about just one national anthem where we all stand in solidarity and love each other? Maybe that's just, me getting on my stage and giving my speech on it. And typically, like we mentioned on the show, we try and stay out of the political debates. But that's why I don't like it. And you guys feel free to counterpoint me on any of that, but that's my personal belief on it.
No, I think it's a valid thought, valid belief. And I think you're right when it comes to okay, so if we have a Black national anthem, is there a Hispanic national anthem? Is there an Asian national anthem, right? A Native American national anthem, so on and so forth. So I do agree with that. And that's sort of why I'm on the fence, is when you sort of publicize a song as hey, this is the Black national anthem, I do see where that can feel as though hey, we're not being inclusive of everybody, right? And that's always been, I think, the main argument for people against Black Lives Matter. So, I support the Black Lives Matter movement. I am a Black individual, but one of the main things that's always, sort of in the counterpoint is, well, Black Lives Matter doesn't seem very inclusive. Now, I can argue what the true meaning of Black Lives Matter means, but then when you go and say hey, this is the Black national anthem, that very much seems okay, there's really no arguing, right? This is the national anthem for Black people, right? Whereas Black Lives Matter is no, we just want equality. So I could see that. What I wish the NFL would have done, rather than just announce it, is given a little bit more education as to hey, here's the background of it. Here's why this means so much to our African-American community. And here's how the song sort of came about. Here's the reason why we're playing it during that first week, rather than just sort of announcing hey, we're going to play this song, the Black National Anthem, right? Or so it's called, during the first week. And I think that would have maybe gone a little bit further.
Yeah, so Edgar, at least on my thoughts there, do you think it's just mostly just the way it was presented probably will cause more issues with it than the actual song itself?
I don't, honestly, I've never heard it before. I mean, I just, just recently brought it up to me. It's been brought up obviously just recently, with everything going on. I've never heard it before. But I mean, like I said, I like the intention. There's a big Black Lives Matters movement right now. And I think it just, Goodell saying, "Hey, listen, we effed up. I've effed up. I'm trying to bring light to the situation, more eyes to the situation. This is my apology to you, and also let you know we have your back. We got you here. We understand now. We're educating ourselves. We're making ourselves aware of what's going on. We'll give you this first week, and this week only, and then we're gonna, carry games on as usual afterwards." I get it. Like I said, good intentions. I get it. I think if it's a one-off thing, then so be it. I'm okay with that. But yeah, I don't really think it's going to be in that it should be something, to divide us in the fact that this national anthem means better more than this one. I just think it's just saying we got you.
I mean, at the end of the day, and my thought on it is like we're all Americans here, right? Like we're all in this together, and we just need to start coming together. Someone has to meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to go more right. Everyone wants to go more left. And we're kind of just keep pulling on that rubber band more and more and more rather than just kind of bring it together. Have you guys ever seen one of those Chinese finger traps?
Yeah.
The idea behind it is that you actually have to bring your fingers together to get out of those. That's society. That's how we get out of this situation we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Not by, just pulling apart. Only thing you're going to do is rip the toy apart or maybe dislocate a finger. And no one wants that. All right, guys. Well, the next subject, and again, this topic doesn't get any easier or better, but it is one thing that definitely has been in the news. It's basically been in the news since about 2013, 2012, when it originally came into the public light. But the Washington Redskins, or the Washington Football Club, or the Washington, whatever you want to call them, whatever you're comfortable with, their name has come under questions. Dan Snyder originally refused to change the name quite a few years ago when it first was brought up, because for him, it's more of a nostalgia thing. The Redskins have been just the team name since it was brought to light in, the 60s, 70s, something along those lines. So it's just been what a lot my generation's grown up with, the previous generation grown up with, and the generation before that had as the team's name. But now it's come to the boiling point where we have all this other discussions going on. Now that's come to the forefront again. And it's probably more likely that it's going to happen than not, because FedEx has officially pulled their money off the table as far as the naming rights and everything. Nike refuses to sell Washington Redskins merchandise. So at this point, if you're Dan Snyder, you kind of got your hands tied behind your back there. You're going to have to, unfortunately, or fortunately, cave. It depends where you're on. And I've switched multiple times along the issue. I still don't think I've officially made up my mind one way or the other on the matter. But Edgar, what do you think of the Washington name? Does it need to go? And if it does go, do you perhaps have a suggestion? Because not enough people are throwing out creative suggestions in this time.
Yeah, I think Dan Snyder has to make a move. He's going to have to make the move. I mean, a lot of money's on the table for him. FedEx pulling out, Nike, those are big, companies to kind of play around with. But also at the same time, Redskins, even barring their name, have been one of the most profitable teams in the last, I don't even know how long. They're still very, very profitable. So with that being said, yeah, he's going to make a move. I think it's time. I think he has to jump on board as well. It's kind of been, something that's always been on the table, always nipping at him. Change the name since probably, you said 60s. But if he were to change the name, God, I did like what Dwayne Haskins, I think Dwayne Haskins right at the quarterback. I think he wanted to call it the DC Red Tails or the Washington Red Tails, dealing with those black Tuskegee Airmen, I believe is what they were, if I'm mistaken. I like that name. I mean, why not? I mean, there's a meaning behind it. You want to change it to something that, I think everyone can get on board. These are, black men that fought for the country. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Okay, Dre, what about you? Any creative name ideas?
Yeah, so I guess I'll first say that, I agree with you and Edgar. I think it's just time for the name to go, right? And the Native American community, if they feel that the name is offensive to them and they're like, hey, this isn't right, then I'm totally on board with changing it. I do like that suggestion. I think it would be cool to either do, a black regiment in the military that fought for us, or a Native American regiment in the military, right? Since, Redskins was the offensive name to Native Americans. Maybe they go with some of our code talkers or something like that. So even code talkers, I think, would be like a cool name. I don't know if that seems offensive or not, but I think that'd be cool. Or another name I was thinking, something military related, was the Minutemen, right? So the Minutemen were really popular during the Revolution, or I shouldn't even say popular, but crucial to the revolution of the country. So I thought, the Minutemen would also be a really cool, interesting name. So I think something historical with historical reference, right? Given that they are in Washington, and especially military, I think always goes well with people.
Well, I think the only way Minutemen's going to work is if they just have an explosive offense. I am talking they score like every minute. Like they have to have the Chiefs times 10 to make that work. But, it's the thing that always comes up in this debate is polls. Like you mentioned, like we don't really know what most Native Americans are thinking about this subject, right? So we did a poll on our Instagram page here, and 57% voted in favor of not changing the name. And it was a diverse audience. I checked. It wasn't just like all your stereotypical people that you may associate with just voting no because the name needs to stay with what it is, right? So I did check that. A lot of times when this subject has come up in the past, there have been polls ran in the 90s, and there was polls ran in the mid-2000s that suggested that on average about 500 Native Americans were polled, and they said the name wasn't considered offensive. So, I mean, it's only now that we're kind of here in the late 2010s that we're talking about this. And like, again, you just talked about the environment, the climate out there. It just seems like now it's times any percentage that we had has just been elevated exponentially because of what's going on. So with that said, like, do those numbers kind of like change your guys' view on it at all? Like when we do kind of like actually look at those, or is it just a matter of why even deal with this issue?
Yeah, I think it's more of like, nothing really changed as far as the numbers go. I still think they should change the name just for, for business reasons. This can also attract more fans too. You made the change. You're going in the right direction. Hey, I'm going to follow this. I'm going to buy this jersey. There's a lot of positives to doing it, as opposed to just plateauing, staying where you're at, or even declining now. This, you could decline. You don't change the name. You can see a decline in sales. Your profits go down, which probably could happen either way. We don't know the landscape, given the COVID-19, if you're going to have fans, and there's a whole lot of other questions besides that. But yeah, I think that, there's a lot of upside to change your name.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Edgar. I think, given that this topic comes up, about every decade, right? Of is it controversial? Is it not controversial? And it's been happening since the 90s, 2000s, 2010s. We're in 2020 now. It's probably just easiest just to say, hey, like there's obviously some form of controversy to it. We might as well avoid this by choosing a name that isn't offensive to anybody, but could still pay homage to, somebody or something with historical relevance. As well as, Edgar was saying, a lot of the ability to rebrand. I think, they're going into sort of a new era, right? They've got a new coach. They've got a new quarterback. They might have another new quarterback soon, right? Depending on how Haskins plays. But I think it would be a good time to be like, hey, we're ushering in the Ron Rivera era. And so we're going to change our name. We're going to change our merchandise. And, hopefully this will be the start to a lot of good things to come. So I think it's just time. You might as well make the move from a business standpoint, from just a political, social climate, and then, just moving forward from a football standpoint. It's maybe time that, hey, we should probably forget the last few years of the Redskin era anyways.
Yeah, I mean, considering the brand of football they put out there. So, I mean, I guess you do bring up a point there. What about the slippery slope argument we're kind of like going on right now? Because I've in the last week, I've seen people make arguments against the Vikings name. I've seen people make arguments against the Chiefs name, the Atlanta Braves, the Florida State Seminoles. Basically, anything that has any association to Native American heritage, as well as the Vikings one. It was kind of a weird, unique one, but that came up in a matter of I mean, the Vikings killed, raped, and pillaged. So why do we want to celebrate them, so to say? Like, with that said, like, if the Redskins domino falls, do you think that these other teams should be on red alert? How do you feel about those team names in general?
You know, you think about the Redskins, though. I mean, Redskins is pertaining to their skin. You know, the name it's in the name, red skin. They're talking about Native Americans. You know, the Braves. I mean, it's you know, not too worried about the Braves. Not too worried about the Chiefs. Chief is the, is the all high, almighty. He's one of the top dog in Native American. If I'm not 100% sure. I don't know the lineage or how it works out. Vikings, same thing. Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of that argument. You know, they raped and pillaged. I mean,
it's very popular on Twitter right now.
Wow, yeah, I should get on Twitter a whole lot more. I'm following the wrong people because I've never heard of that before. But I think all these other names, I don't think they need a change. That's just my opinion. I don't see I don't see those names as offensive to me.
What about the Indians? So, I mean, the Indians have dropped Chief Wahoo a couple years ago anyway. So, like, people keep bringing up the, cartoon red Indian that was, like, their logo as of just 2017. But that's not a thing anymore. At this point, the only thing about them is they're the Cleveland Indians. What do you make of that?
Yeah. I think that was a great step, is removing that logo. I mean, just coming up with a C. As far as Indian, I don't see anything derogatory. I don't see anything, that would shed dark light on it. It's Indian. I mean, I didn't even get rid of them. I'm offended by the Cleveland Browns as a Brown person. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's just start getting rid of these names. Let's do the Cincinnati Reds. Let's just start doing that. I don't think it's, it's derogatory. I don't think it's, pertaining to, race and in general. So I think I think the logo as it is now with the name is fine.
Yeah, I sort of agree with Edgar on a lot of those, in that, like, when you say Redskins, right, like, that's directly targeted at a certain group of people, right? Like, it'd be having a team called, like, the Blackskins, right, and having a black dude as your logo or something. Like, yeah, that's pretty offensive. Now, I will say the one name where I actually do differ from Edgar is the Indians. I did have a friend recently on Facebook that educated me, and she was like, hey, I don't really like the name Indian, just because we're not from India, right? And they're truly Native Americans. So I do think if there is going to be a name that sort of falls next, it probably would be the Cleveland Indians. Like you said, Juju, just because for some in the Native American community, they feel as though Indian is a derogatory term, and that, like, it was what Westerners sort of gave them because they were trying to go to India and they just happened to get it wrong, right? And they decided, well, we're still correct and we're calling you Indian, even though this isn't India, right? And we're not in the Indies. That's
correct.
That's
like it's education. See, I didn't know that. It's that's education. I think a lot of people need to be educated on some of these certain things. See, and I didn't know that, and that's a good point.
Yeah, so that's my only difference with you, from your take, Edgar, and I could totally see people saying, "Hey, I don't think it's that offensive," right? And we keep it. I see the argument.
For me personally, like, I have such a large group of my family that's Navajo, Native American, Indian. But I mean, if you called them Indian, they wouldn't take huge offense to it either. So I mean, it's just a question of, like, if some people are offended by it, do you just drop it as a whole? How big is that sum? Are we talking 1%, 2%? If 1% of people don't like it, do you just drop it as a whole? That's the thing. I feel like Redskins has been like a thing of, we've seen that number grow more. Like, we're talking like this at this point in 2020, the most recent polls are like, we're talking 40%, right? Okay, that's almost half of the country. When we look at, like, political elections, right, the amount of people that vote for Republican or Democrat are about 40%. So it's okay, fine, I could get that one, but the Indians as a whole hasn't really had that same level of outrage, aside again from the regrettable logo. I mean, Chief Wahoo, it was fun in Major League, but we can leave it in the past. I'm fine with that. I'll say that. I think Indians is fine, but who knows? Give it a couple years. I'm sure we're going to be more offended by something else. Let's be honest. Let's be frank about this right now. Okay, well, FedEx may have pulled the Redskins sponsorships. Nike may have pulled their sponsorships from the Redskins. We're going to ask that Razor Sports doesn't pull their sponsorship from the Slumpbuster podcast. So let's give a quick shout out to them real quick. Hello, guys. This is Juju Talk Sports. You like sports betting, right? Of course you do. Well, let's bust that slump. Let me tell you about RazorSport.com. Razor is a worldwide sports betting network all designed around helping you. Their diverse crew of handicappers produce plays the biggest sharps don't want you to know about. Go to their website right now and sign up for a free trial at RazorSport.com. That's Razor, R-A-Z-E-R, Sport.com. Proud partners of the Slumpbuster podcast. Check them out and enjoy the rest of the show. And we are back. Thank you to Razor Sports. Go ahead and check them out. Text them to get kind of like a setup on a free trial. You know, I suck at sports betting. They don't. They'll help you out. They'll get you back in the win category right there. So we're going to close out with just a couple quick hitter topics I'm just going to mention real quick. So we mentioned players are not necessarily returning to their league's respective restart plan. We talked about Avery Bradley last week for the Lakers. This week, it was announced David Price will not be returning to baseball. So the Dodgers will not have him. I don't know if that means they get out of paying his ridiculously stupid contract. Victor Oladipo of the Indiana Pacers, he will also not be returning to his team, which means that the Pacers get lucky. So they get to go home a little early. Rather than getting beat in 5 games, they get to beat in 4 in the first round. So congratulations, Indiana. You get your team back from Orlando right away. Anyway, so just a couple quick hitters, but we're going to transition to the world of MMA because we did get some news there about UFC 251. So Fight Island, Abu Dhabi, things are rock and rolling. We had a great card the previous week. Now it's time to get into the pay-per-views. GIlbert Burns, who was supposed to be on this card, unfortunately tested positive for COVID-like symptoms. So wish a speedy recovery to Gilbert. And it's a shame because great opportunity against the champion, Kamaru Usman. He's ready to fight. But blessing in disguise, at least for fans, because I think if you ask the average fan, they wanted what came next. Jorge Masvidal, the BMF champion, Street Jesus as he's been called, has been inserted into GIlbert Burns' spot. Now, Andre, I'm going to let you start this one off. MMA Dre, get us into it. What do you make of this news? Are you happy about it? What's your opinion?
I'm personally a little bit disappointed. I did want to see Burns. I thought that he did a fantastic job against Woodley the last time we saw him. But what I actually am happy about is he gets a little bit more rest, right? So that was a pretty quick turnaround within, I want to say within 2 months, which if you're an MMA fighter, right, it's not like your typical season of sports where it's like a football season is, 4 or 5 months long and you're constantly playing. It's like you have a fight, you need a break. Most guys tend to take about 3 months off, but there's some people that even take a whole year off between their fights. So I am actually excited that we do get to see Burns rest up a little bit more. I did think it was kind of a quick turnaround for him as far as fighting. The other thing is I think the Jorge Masvidal fight could potentially make for a really good fight. I think Masvidal is always willing to come in and fight. As far as I know, he also has the most experience as far as total fights under his belt for a challenger that is going after a title fight. So he has over 40 professional fights or something like that. And so I think it's going to be really interesting. I don't know how good of a fight it's going to make just because Masvidal, we know, was in, contract disputes. We know COVID's been going on, so I don't know how much he's been training, and it's only on like 6 days notice. So I am a little bit worried about that. But I do think that it can still be a really fun, really entertaining UFC card.
Edgar, how much of a chance are you giving Street Jesus in this matchup?
Listen, man, you can never count out the Street Jesus. The reason why I call him the Street Jesus, that's where he grew up, on the streets. He's used to fighting at a drop of a hat. This is nothing new to him. He can fight whenever, wherever. There's a crazy story Chael Sonnen was telling about where Jorge Masvidal was in a club. 2 guys would start to mess with him. He knocks them both out. Goes to the bathroom to kind of lay low for a little bit. A random guy walks in, knocks him out. He tells Chael, "I didn't want to take the chance. I had to knock him out too." So he doesn't care who's in front of him. He's going to try to knock you out. And that's kind of been his resurgence last year. I mean, I think he's had, almost 40 fights without having a title shot in the UFC or something like that. So I think he's used to fighting on 2-3, hour notice. 6-day notice, I don't think it's going to be a problem. He's the ultimate professional. He'll cut the weight. He'll make the weight. A lot of people aren't talking about that because they're so excited about this fight, just like I am. He still has to make weight. He also still has to clear probably about 2 more COVID tests as well. So, I mean, there's still a lot of hurdles to go before this fight actually happens. So I'm not fully convinced yet the fight's going to happen until I turn my TV on Saturday and see him across the cage against each other.
Yeah, Edgar, that's a really good point, though, about the cutting weight, man. Like, 6 days notice, because normally guys start dieting by now, right? And they've changed their diet completely to where it's mostly protein, right, and high-quality fats. And he might have just been, eating pizza yesterday, right?
You never know. Yeah. You never know. Get into that good South Florida food. You never know what's going on over there. But the thing about him, I think he's a natural 170. He's historically fought at 155 pounds. 170 is a better weight for him. I don't think it'll be a problem dropping the weight. But like I said, he's a professional. He said it himself. He's been doing it for 16 years. Time is coming. The money's right now, it looks like, or else he would never sign on the dotted line. So, yeah, I think it's his time, and I think he was ready. I think in the back of his mind, he was ready. I'm glad that this fight's happening. Like you said, I'm glad GIlbert Burns did very well against Tyron Woodley. I'm glad it was a quick turnaround. I think it would have been more positive for him if he took the fight right now, being on a hot streak, still healthy, still training. They didn't take a lot of damage against Woodley. I don't know what Woodley was trying to do. One of the most explosive fighters out there. Wasn't really trying to touch him. He was waiting for him to come in, and when GIlbert came in, he got touched. But this is a fight I wanted to watch. I thought they set it up a long time ago at a press row of the Super Bowl. I thought they were going to fight right there. I thought it was something was going to happen there for free, and I was all ready for it. But now we have to pay. They're getting paid, and I'm just ready for the fight to happen.
Well, we know styles make fights, and I am a little bit concerned, though, in terms of matchup here. So Usman, fantastic wrestler, fantastic grappler. I think Jorge, coming off the bench, he might be more interested in standing and bagging. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to work towards his advantage in, a 5-round championship match. I mean, that's hard to do, like to be in a wrestling match, basically, because that's going to work your entire body. And I think that that's going to be Usman's game to basically walk away with his title on Saturday. That's how I feel about it. I don't really, to be honest, if we're just going to make predictions right now, I don't give Masvidal much of a chance. I'm going Usman all the way. I would rather have seen, and maybe this crazy, I would rather seen the Colby rematch than Masvidal right now.
Yeah, I personally lean a little bit more towards you, Julian. So it sounds like Edgar really does like Masvidal. I don't know if you're picking him, Edgar, but I think I'm still going to take Usman. The one thing I do worry is Usman switched camps, right? Because he had planned on fighting Burns, and they were in the same camp together, right? And so it's hard to have the gym time, right, and training camps going on at the same time of 2 guys that are going to compete against each other. So Usman relocated his camp. So one thing that I'm interested in is, one, how beneficial will that be, or will it be detrimental, right? Is you're now training with coaches that you've never trained with before, possibly, or you at least haven't spent that much time with, and a whole training camp. So I think that may work against Usman. But where I think it did help him is he was fighting with Justin Gaethje, and we saw in that last fight that Justin Gaethje had is that dude can throw hands, right? So almost probably as good as striking as Masvidal, probably not as strong for sure. But Gaethje is a good striker. So I agree with you, Julian. I think that Usman's going to be prepared. I think he's got the better wrestling. And so I think ultimately his style is going to beat Masvidal.
I will say
I think you're right there. I mean, I think you're right that I think the playing field is a little bit level in that sense. Masvidal taking the fight on 6 days' notice, but Usman also changed the opponent on 6 days' notice. Mm-hmm. Usman, I believe, hasn't been beaten. I think he has 11-fight winning streak, I believe, in the UFC. So has not been beaten yet. And you're talking about a top-tier division, 170 pounds. Colby Covington fight, amazing fight. I would love to see a rematch. Colby Covington got my respect that day. I never respected him before that. But you also have to think Usman's training with one of the best coaches out there in Trevor Whitman. Trevor Whitman obviously is helped people like George St. Pierre, Nate Marquardt being another one. So has a lot of talent, has a lot of fights under his belt. Rashad Evans being another one as well. So there is that correlation, that Rashad Evans, a big good friend of Kamaru Usman, there's a reason why Trevor Whitman's in his corner. He's gonna sharpen up those tools. That Kamaru Usman's a great grappler, we saw. I think he could clean up his stand-up, and that's what he went to go do. And I think this is that's going to help him out ultimately. I'm a big fan of Jorge Masvidal. I think Jorge Masvidal deserves everything that's coming his way. I'm with you guys. I'm going with Usman as well.
Okay, clean across the board. So Usman's our boy on Saturday night. So watch as we all get upset because, I mean, we made a mistake a couple weeks ago, or I guess actually a couple months ago. Time flies, but during the Tony Ferguson Justin Gaethje fight, we underestimated the fact that Ferguson had been training that whole time for Khabib, and then got thrown in a surprise when he had faced Gaethje. That was still at least a month's notice. This is 6 days, so that does work in Masvidal's favor. Now, I just, quick thing, because we did mention GIlbert Burns is unfortunately not going to be able to compete here. Nate Diaz did call him out on Twitter, I should say. They had a little back and forth. How interested are you guys in that potential fight?
Yeah, I think that makes a good fight. They're both very good on the ground. Both very, very good black belts. And obviously, GIlbert Burns has improved his stand-up. Ever since getting knocked out by Dan Hooker at 155 pounds, he's improved his stand-up. But, we're talking about, I think the jiu-jitsu cancels itself out. Just like you saw with Colby Compton and Kamaru Usman, the grappling cancels itself out. You're going to see a stand-up fight. I'm going to go stand-up fight. I'm going to go with Nate Diaz. If Nate Diaz wants to take a fight against GIlbert Burns, I'm taking Nate Diaz. He's long. He peppers you. He will drown you, is what he would do. One of the best cardio out there. And also Andre Ward, SOG, one of my favorite boxers, is trained with both Diaz brothers and also has gone on record saying if they want to box, they can hang with anybody they want. This is one of the pound-for-pound best fighters saying that. So, I mean, if a fight does happen, I'm definitely going Diaz.
That's interesting. I'm going to go the opposite way. I think I'm going to take Burns. Mostly, like you said, they're both really, really good at jiu-jitsu, so I don't know how much we'll see from them on the ground. But I do think if they do end up on the ground, it could be really fun if you like the grappling aspect of the sport, right? And me, I do jiu-jitsu. I've done wrestling my whole life, and so I'm like, oh, man, this would be cool to see. But I'm actually going to give it to Burns on the feet, not necessarily because he's the better striker. I just think he's the better athlete. And so the Diaz brothers have sort of a different type of athleticism where they're not necessarily super explosive or, the hardest hitting, but they just keep applying pressure. They keep coming after you. Like you said, they've got a really long gas tank. And, they've done triathlons in their spare time when they're not training for a fight. But Burns just has that like quick, explosive athleticism where he'll just catch you. He'll be in and out before you can even, get to him. So just for that reason, I'm going to, be different from you, Edgar, and then I'll take Burns in that one. But I think you make a lot of really good points.
Yeah, sure.
I'll close our MMA talk with just a quote from Kamaru Usman. After I ragdoll Jorge Masvidal, I'm taking that BMF bout home with me. So this is also a BMF title bout, if you guys didn't get that coming in. All right. So we talked about favorite movies coming into the show. We're going to close out with your favorite sports movie all time, Edgar. The floor is yours.
God, that's a good one. I'd have to go Ali.
Oh,
I would go
okay.
Ali. Will Smith, Ali. Yeah, I think it's a great movie. I think he did a good job. I'm also shedding light on, Muhammad Ali as a whole, but, the GOAT, the original GOAT, Muhammad Ali. If I'm going to go 1A and 1B, I'm actually not. I'm just going to mention it. Honorable mention, Bloodsport, for sure, another.
Okay, a couple of popular combat sport movies. Ali definitely is a classic. I forget, did that win the Academy Award? I thought it did.
I think it did, yeah. I think it did. I think Will Smith did get something for that.
Trey, did you watch Ali?
No, I actually haven't yet. So it's on my list of ones that I need to watch. But Ali definitely, like, now that I've done a little bit more striking, right, I'm in the gym. I'm like, oh, I just love his footwork. It's he makes it look so smooth and so easy. But it's a lot harder than it looks. So it's on my list.
Okay. Next subject of discussion, sports plus life. Edgar, educate the people on where, how, when they can listen to you.
Well, Sports Plus Life, you can find me usually on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts is where you can find me. Right now, I'm recording once a week. I'll be recording tomorrow. Probably look for it on Wednesday. You can also follow me on Instagram at Sports Plus Life and Twitter, Sports Plus Life. Also, my personal page, MrAKACO, Mr. AKACO on Instagram and Twitter as well. And I'm also streaming on Twitch. I'm doing a man of many hats. So Twitch as well, twitch.tv/Mr. AKACO. So yeah, find me wherever. I'm plugging everything.
Fantastic. All right, guys. Well, that will do it for the 58th edition of the Slumpbuster podcast. Go ahead and find us on Instagram at Slumpbuster Podcast, on Twitter at Slumpbuster Pod. Go ahead and save 20% off with our promo code SLUMP at manscaped.com, as well as checking out our sponsor, Razor Sport, RAZER Sport.com. With that said, everyone stay safe, happy, healthy, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next episode.